The Locsin office actually was in 3 locations over history. No? In the late 50s, it was down in Malate, sort of at the Ramona Apartments. There was an office unit. It started out there. And then for many, many years, I think sort of in the 60s, my father moved his office to a building that they designed on 448 EDSA. You know. And it stayed there for a very long time until 1980, maybe the early 80s or so. Eventually, this building was constructed, and I think this was occupied, siguro, if I'm not mistaken, maybe in 80, or it was began in 84. Maybe the office moved here in 88 or 89. The office has always been relatively simple. There's a grand drafting room, a large drafting room, a series of smaller meeting rooms, and then this was his personal office. He would meet clients here, do fairly intimate, smaller presentations, and generally he worked out of this office. No? Small conferences with the staff and things like that. Yeah, he surrounded himself with things that he liked, basically sort of that he was really into. No? So when it came down to this sort of issue of sort of what I was gonna do, parang there were a lot of things that were open to me, and I talked to my dad about it, and it turned out that when I did that architecture class, I found out even for there that I was pretty good at it, right? For some reason, and I think it's just living around that atmosphere, parang as a kid growing up. Somehow there were things that rubbed off. And his advice to me at the time was that I asked him, so you think about architecture and stuff? And he goes, well, you know, architecture is not an easy thing, right? There's something very alluring about it. It parang straddles the thing between art and science. You use both parts of your brain and all of that. But it is a supremely risky thing. Okay, and what did he mean by that? He explained. He said, you know, you can be the most talented, incredibly talented, gifted architect, visionary, and all of that. But if you don't happen to live at a time and context, you're not in a time or context where your society recognizes your value and what's in your head, okay? The streets are littered with bodies of incredibly talented, hardworking, even more deserving architects who never make it, right? It's so chancy. So much of it is luck, right? You could be the most, shall we say, dedicated person, and yet nothing happens because somehow your society does not recognize your value or your genius, if you are a genius at all, or anything like that. And so much of it is luck, time and place, somehow. And he said, if you are thinking of becoming an architect of some sort, you're going to be an architect, it's important that you do so only if you feel that you will die if you don't do it. That's the way he put it, right? Because if you become so passionate about architecture and you do happen to live at a time and place where society does not recognize your thing, because you love it, you'll still be happy, right? You'll still be passionate. It doesn't matter. If you can't make a living at it, somehow you're not recognized or whatever, you don't, I don't know, you'll still be happy because you love the darn thing. So that's a reason to do it. But if you don't love it that much, you don't feel that you're gonna die if you don't do it, do something else. There are any number of things that could be fulfilling, or shall we say more sustainable, or it's more sustaining. So it wasn't really that he said don't be an architect, but it was like, you know, think about it. Do it if you feel that way about it, right? Fair warnings. I mean, if you do choose architecture, there are going to be, and you come back here to do it. The weird circumstance is that there's going to be this expectation of having shoes to fill, right? And you wouldn't wish that on anybody. So I wouldn't wish that on you. That you feel you have to fill my shoes or anything like that. It's like unfair pressure, diba? So again, many reasons to consider it. But again, do it only if you feel you're gonna die if you don't do it. Because no matter what happens, whether you're recognized or not, or you fill shoes or you don't fill shoes, you'll still be relatively happy because it's something that you love to do. It won't be just work. I think in a very simple way, I'd like him to be remembered as a person with a lot of integrity, who was made of good stuff. In other words, he was a good person with a lot of integrity, who managed to somehow leave the world a little better than the way he found it, right? And in doing so, sort of whatever it is that he left behind had meaning for the people he cared so much for, that he cared about. I think in very simple terms, that's kind of it. Personally, my memories of him, or how I remember him, our family remembers him, is much more personal. But sa amin na yan, right? But parang on the public side of things, yeah, that he was a good person who had a lot of integrity at what he did, and left the world a better place than the way he found it for the people that he cared about the most.